Brian Parham with the Rock Dojo, and I'm so very excited. I'm sitting down with one of my heroes that I have known for so long, since I was like 17 or 18 years old, virtuoso blues guitar player, Matt Bennick. Matt, so wonderful to have you on the Rock Dojo YouTube channel. I'm so happy to see you.
I'm excited. I've been looking forward to this all week. This is great, man.
And Matt, I think you were gonna play us a little something.
Yeah, let me come up with something really quick here.
Bravo, man. Matt, as I was listening to you play that, I had this memory of being 17 years old, just like driving to my friend Pete's house and hearing you play Freebird solo, like down the whole street. I didn't know it was you. I didn't even know you at the time, but just hearing
All
like this
right.
incredible guitar just just like mind melting me all the way down the whole avenue, dude. Like note for note, just being blown away. And I think that was me being first introduced, maybe even to the guitar, dude. Being first introduced
All
to the
right.
guitar was hearing you, not even knowing you were playing. I think you were rehearsing in a house
Yeah.
on that street, and just unbelievable. So, Matt, I'm super honored to have you. So let's get started. How did you get started playing the guitar?
So, it's interesting how I got started because I woke up on my birthday. There had been an acoustical guitar floating around in my family. It was one of these where like the action was this far off the fretboard, and my parents got a hold of this through I had a cousin that had taken some lessons and lost interest. So, it was we borrowed this, and on my like seventh birthday, I think I signed up. My parents signed me up for guitar lessons right down the street, and I was gonna play guitar. And I think that my parents saw some musical interest in me. Like I would always tap on things, pretend things were a piano. In fact, if I remember correct, I think I wanted to start on a piano or keyboard. But it's funny because the sounds that I was hearing in say the 1980s, I didn't even know it was a guitar. Like I thought it was electronic keyboards doing all the crazy Van Halen type stuff. Like I didn't recognize that instrument that I had that my parents were kind of almost forcing me to do at that time. I didn't realize it was capable of producing those sounds. So as the journey began and I was kind of eased into that, and I definitely was intrigued, and that kept me going even through some of the classical things that one would begin with and reading music and stuff like that. But I definitely could see where my teacher went, with that, and I'm glad I stuck with it. It was one of those things where it's like I don't know if I chose music or if it chose me, type of deals.
I know exactly what you mean. Do you remember the first song that you played on the guitar?
Well, I would take a guess that it was probably something along the lines of like Happy Birthday or something like that, or I think it might have been Jingle Bells,
Oh,
like
okay.
one of those like book one things. But after years of doing like obscure classical songs, the first actual song that I started doing by ear was Sleepwalk from Santo and Johnny. That was actually like there's something about that very eerie Hawaiian slide, and you could probably hear it in my playing even today, like that kind of Hawaiian. I do some of it with the whammy bar, and it just something about that had this like ghostly, make your hair stand up kind of sound, and I wanted to learn how to do that. And the only item that was holding me back was when you're learning how to read music, you're pretty much stuck in this area, and I think like I had to kind of take it upon myself to recognize that I had more notes on the guitar that my teacher didn't really get into. And I literally learned it like I'd rewind it and it was like, oh, it's not that note, it's not, oh, it's it, I'm getting closer, or it's on this string. Like I remember it took forever just to get like 5 notes by ear, and that kind of really started that aspect of playing.
Do you still have that song in your hands?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, if you had something like and it keeps going.
So, but you weren't playing it like that at 7.
No, you know what? I heard so many renditions of it done because I guess a lot of good guitar players gravitated towards that song, and I took one bit from like Brian Setzer's version and one bit from Jeff Beck, and the original. So I mean there's some really wild versions of it, and then I ended up getting back to the original version that, and simpling it back up, and but just kind of adding little bursts of my own trickery.
Although knowing you though, you actually probably could have been doing that when you were 7 because you were already like full. I mean, you were like fully developed. I'm like 17, this fully developed professional guitar player that make most people spend their whole lives trying to get to that level. So, who are your guitar heroes, Matt?
So it went in phases. Initially, I really didn't have many because I was just being exposed to like the Beatles and things like of that nature on acoustical guitar because I didn't have an electric at that point. And once I got into uh, learning songs on my own, I definitely got into the discovery of the Eric Clapton. Like, I would ask like, well, who's the popular guitar players? And I remember like in our high school, like I was into like 1950s rock and roll, rockabilly, and I remember somebody came up to him. They're like, "Dude, you suck. You don't know enough metal." And like here I am doing like these pieces of like intricate things, and I was like, "Really? All right, well, okay." But I started getting into like Eric Clapton, like acoustic stuff, and um, that branched into I was infatuated with certain versions of Christmas songs. So then I had to kind of do research and find out, oh, that was Chet Atkins, and that was Les Paul, and that was, so I kind of gravitated towards the older generation of players, such as like 60s type of guys like the Clapton, Hendrix. And then I got introduced to Michael Bloomfield. I really enjoyed what he did, and Eric Johnson is one of my guys now. That it's very satisfying to me to be able to pull off any phrase that he does and get the tone because it's just such an accomplishment if I could do that. So my influences, I mean, Stevie Ray Vaughan was a big one that I remember ripping about two of his albums apart in like a year or so, and really tightening up my blues skills. And Johnny Winter was definitely one that we were talking about before we were on. And I remember the first blues performance that I saw on television. It was like an Apollo Theater like 20th anniversary of the blues or 50th anniversary of the blues, whatever it was. And they had five blues guitar players on the stage. And this was my introduction to blues. So they had Jeff Beck, Clapton, B.B. King, Albert Collins, and Buddy Guy. And they had the 2 hour long special closed out with the guitar blues part of this. And it was past my bedtime, so my parents recorded it for me, like on VHS. And I remember watching it the next morning, and my life was changed when I heard BB King really get this, like, I never heard anything like it, because blues was not something, especially like blues guitar is not something that was on the radio or on television all that much. That stripped down version of electric blues.
Wow. So, Matt, I really feel like you're someone who took all these influences and developed your own unique sound. And I'm curious to know if you have any recommendations. Either how did you develop your own unique voice on the guitar, or recommendations for how other people can develop their own unique voice on the guitar.
So, um, you could look at it a couple different ways. I think it does depend on the individual and what your goals are. So what happens is you would have, like, teach students from all ages guitar, from beginning level all the way up to advanced. And when I'm working with somebody, I kind of, find out how they learn first. So, are they somebody that needs to dive in and feel the guitar and kind of look at their fingers and feel how that string is? Do they have an ear for music? Do they need tablature in front of them? Are they memorizing things? And once I kind of get a value judgment as to what how they're processing the information, then I could go ahead and be like, okay, check out this guitar player, or check out this guitar player. And I could generally sense, um, like, say if I have a visual learner, I'll have them check out the artist on YouTube so that they get the visual aspect of it along with the auditory. But what I'll do is, like, I'll have them write down like five of their favorite songs that they want to do on guitar, or maybe five of their favorite solos from different artists. And I kind of stick with the mantra of that, back in the, say, the 1950s and 60s, when a lot of the guitar greats were just coming up, there was not guitar teachers on every corner. And what they did was they took records and slowed them down and copied their heroes. So I do recommend that, at least partially, to try and emulate, and somebody that's believable for them. And then as their skill level improves, I could kind of hear them mixing, different licks, the content of all the different players. And then before you know it, they're putting their own twist on it. And that's similar to what I think I do. And I think everybody arrives at that result where, you're putting ingredients into the soup, and it's gonna come out sounding like you at the end. Even if you're in a snapshot of time where you're maybe emulating Jimi Hendrix and you're on a kick of just Jimi Hendrix. Well, the moment that you switch that and you maybe get into somebody else, now there's already that mixture taking place. And it's pretty neat to see somebody really nail down each person's sound, and then how it kind of, via sometimes your equipment, or, like, you could take all these influences and then put them on a jazz guitar, and they're going to sound, like a totally different thing, So it's a big process of making little believable goals for somebody. And then once they kind of have an idea where music is headed, and maybe they're exposed to enough guitar players that are good, at that point I could start working with them on, their individual style. Or if I notice a student going to a move that they kind of like, I'll accentuate that and be like, hey, do that again. That was a cool move. That could be one of your signature moves. And they didn't even realize they did it. And so sometimes I'll point out things that maybe they didn't see or, observe. And I could kind of help them along in that, in that regard.
Fantastic, Matt. I'm gonna switch gears a little bit.
Yeah.
I like to the central theme for these interviews is why is music important. So we're gonna go a little bit from guitar specific to
Yes.
more of the values of music because there, as you mentioned earlier, I don't know if it was when we were on camera or before, is how many different options kids have today and how many different options people have today. So let's
Yes.
talk about music in general. How has music shaped your life as an individual?
So when you look, obviously this is the vehicle that I was interested in getting there, but you know like when you hear just music on the radio or you hear a song, there doesn't have to be any guitar in it for it to do something to you, to your mood. So I think initially music started out being a type of mechanism that I used to go through certain emotional things. Like I noticed, like in autumn or in fall, I would listen to a lot of jazz. It just had a certain vibe to it. And then in the summer, I listened to like a lot of just fun stuff. It was fun to hang out by the pool and just listen to fun pop, songs. So in that regard, you have the emotional attachment, from a specific artist or song that you're listening to, and that puts you in a certain mode, or you can remember a good time. It kind of, it kind of is. Um, Even if you're doing an activity, music is always in the peripherals of what you're doing, whether it's just something going on in the background, that, it's a fun song going on. But I think as you start studying music, um, you start learning from music about life. So, when you play a wrong note, well, isn't that a lot like making a mistake in life, and you could correct that note by, just play a new note and try that new note out. And I noticed that, like, not so much learning off a teacher, but learning off music and learning from, trying to figure music out and learn it and listen to it, and how everything works in symphony together. Everything is in concert together. So, I think originally, I was always fixated with the guitar. And then I realized, hey, there's other instruments going on in there. I should respect them too. Just like being on a team, like when you're with a band, you want to listen to what everybody is offering. And what happens is at some point you end up, if you realize what to look for, and even I try and suggest this with students, is to, like, notice how, music and life, music's a part of life, but it also is a reflection of life that, you could learn from it. You have basic content of what's in music. Well, you have content in your life. You have what notes to play, and well, you have choices to make in life. So it's even the learning process when you get into, when somebody shows you the way that you learned and how you actually took information, you didn't know what you didn't know, somebody showed it to you, now you know it, now you got to practice it, and then eventually it becomes autopilot, like second nature. So when you're learning anything, so I'm thinking, oh, wait a minute, this doesn't just apply to music, this is life. So if I want to go fly fishing, I never went fly fishing before, so somebody has to show me how to do that, and then I need to go out and practice that, and then eventually it'll become second nature. So you start learning from the process that you applied to music into virtually every aspect of your life. So that's been at least the most up to date, um, way that I could describe how music has impacted my life, not just from a guitar standpoint, but from everything from driving a car to being mindful of people to being respectful of people. Even if there's music that you don't like, I remember like when I was maybe a teenager and I'd go out and I'd hear people like a cover band. And I'd be like, they're a cover band, the heck with that. Well, years later, I found myself in a cover band and I was like, well, this is hard. This is hard work. The owner of the band is out hustling and talking to people. How much of a scumbag was I to be down and musicians out there till 3 in the morning working and communicate and trying to get the crowd into it and have a good time and things like that. So it's funny the lessons if you're open to it and you see it, the lessons that you could learn from watching a band, listening to music, and even appreciating the place in their life that a band is at, and what their goals were. Was it to put a record out to make you feel good? So you get empathy, you get all these different aspects of life that leaks through in music, and those are only the ones I could name now off the top of my head.
Matt, that was beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. Really beautiful. Can you tell me about your philosophy as a music educator?
So my philosophy as a music educator is very much not about me. In fact, like I consider myself more of a person that is responsible for an exchange of value. So when somebody pays money to go to learn the guitar, well, I try and sprinkle in, life lessons and goals and this and that to kind of, help them out generally in life. But what I try and recognize is, as I mentioned before, how an individual learns. Because everybody's different. Even people that are quote unquote learning disabled or slow, they might be so advanced with their recognitions of patterns on a guitar that maybe it went right by their school teachers at their high school or something. So, I try and take myself out of the equation as far as like pushing an agenda. I don't have an agenda with it like you're going to learn from this book and then go to the next book and then go to the next. I don't do that. It depends on the students, their goals, and then if they don't have goals, I'll try and shape their goals by exposing them to different uh, options with music. Like, do they want to play in a school orchestra, or do they want to play in a band, or do they want to play by a campfire and sing songs? Is it more of a fun hobby? And what I'll do is, my philosophy is to nurture that in which is their goal and help them keep forming new goals.
What does music have to offer kids? Especially, I know that we're coming at the tail end of the pandemic, but in the
Yeah.
modern age, what does music have to offer young people?
So right off the bat, you have something that is this weird looking thing with strings on it. And I think that I always try and set a young person up to win. So if I were to throw out like a big song out at somebody that's maybe 6 months into their guitar lessons or something like that, and I'm just speaking from a guitar standpoint. If I were to set them up with a certain song that I knew that they were going to fail at, I'd be a jerk for doing so. I would set them up for failure. So what I try and do is like, hey, yeah, and if you just got done learning two or three strings, I'm going to give you a song that that you could do right then and there, and you could see someone light up when they accomplish it. So there's these little mile markers that everybody seems to hit, and then their belief in what they could do goes up, and what they could accomplish playing music. And then I also encourage, a big part of like say my curriculum is like people have like summer reading lists at school, like of books. I give out summer suggested listening lists of like great guitar work that maybe people wouldn't be familiar with, and that might open up, especially a youngster, up to maybe music that does something to them emotionally that they either want to listen to, or they would want to maybe learn an instrument, or maybe they hear a different instrument in the background that they really like, and maybe they want to switch to a different instrument because they really like something that they never had heard before. But like, generally speaking, we're in a generation where music is being streamed, and it kind of goes by very quickly, and people just see the name of the song and the artist real quick, maybe. A lot of times they don't even know who the artist is. But all I know is that there's when people come into a classroom or something, they bring in their Spotify list or something like that. Oftentimes there's no guitar in it, but those songs are doing something to them on the inside that makes them feel good. So anything that I could do to help nurture their choices musically, or sprinkle in as a host some different things, or explain how maybe hey, this song is really good, like this is what went into it, this is maybe we could look at the production side of it, or the recording end, or that type of thing. And so it's really unique for everybody. And I just try and uh, notice where music falls into their life, as more of a listener, as a player, the computer end of it. Is it just a hobby? But either way, it's important to them, and important to notice what they kind of are getting out of that. So, like I said, any way that I could, move that process along and expand it, then I've done my job.
Fantastic. Matt, how can parents integrate music education into their everyday lives of their kids?
So, you know what? That's probably one of the bigger struggles I think that we all have encountered. Um, what I do notice is, and this is something that I've been guilty of, is that we take everything so serious. And I've ran into parents even that are like, Junior better learn how to read music, and that's what we want. And meanwhile, Junior is maybe an extreme auditory learner and doesn't want anything to do with reading the little dots on the page, at least yet. So one of the things that I guess I'm getting at is that I want it to be fun. And one of the things that I do is, like a lot of guitar techniques or scales, or maybe, even reading music, maybe some of the not so fun things, I have people do as a warm up. Instead of getting into a practice routine or a musical routine, I'll have them warm up with something. And then it's surprisingly, at the end of like maybe 3 months, they're running through a pentatonic scale and having a conversation with me. And it's like, okay, this then. And I was like, well, how did you practice that? So what I tend to do is I came up with something called priority practice. And that is, either at the beginning of a session or an end of a session, you want to do a warm up or a cool down, similar to like a workout, and run through maybe a scale or your chords, for a little bit, just a little bit, especially people starting out, like, okay, we're going to go over your major chords today. All right. I'll start a half hour lesson. Hey, run through the A pentatonic scale for me. And that kind of, it synchronizes their hands, it gets everything ready and the blood flowing. And then we go right to their goal. So when you kind of make the not so fun stuff fun and make a majority of everything fun, it actually compartmentalizes in the brain fun. It's actually stored in the brain in the fun file, rather than stored in the, like, I gotta practice my modes today. And I have a great deal of convincing getting to the parental part of it to explain that, like, if I present it in that method, they could arrive at the same result and have a smile on their face when they put their guitar down for the day, when you kind of incorporate all of that together.
Very, very good, Matt. So, last two questions.
Sure.
What skills should every musician learn, regardless of their instrument? If they're playing piano, if they're a vocalist, or anything.
So what I've noticed is there's a big difference between knowing an instrument and being a musician. So, if you know, like I often get people come into guitar lessons and they think it's going to be easy because there's a lot of guitar owners. There's not a lot of guitar players that actually know what they're doing. So, like, well, so I'll get past that. Same thing with, so say a vocalist or a bass player or a piano player or whatever. I think a huge skill is ultimately music is sound, and you got to have um, a sensibility of your ear at some point. So a lot of people will, and I know probably some teachers are like, he ain't telling the whole truth. I don't care. Um, so like if I took this Robin Ford uh, book here that I was, there's no music in here. There's nothing in there. I don't hear anything. Do you hear anything? I don't hear anything. There's nothing in there. It's just a bunch of dots on a page. So what happens is the music ends up being part of you. So at some point you need to integrate your ear to make music, to make that sound. And that ultimately will get someone the gig at the end of the day because they sounded good. And I don't mean just because of your equipment. Like at the end of the day, you have your musical content, whether you could read charts, whether you could play blues, whether you could improvise. So you have your ammunition, your content. But then you have all that content, and then you need treatment on how are you going to play it. Okay, well, I have all this content and I'm going to go maybe interview for a job for a band, or talk to somebody about maybe doing some theater, music score behind some of the actors, and I audition. And if I go out there and my first move is, they're going to kick you out because it's nothing. It's like, well, so what? So it doesn't mean being the fastest. It doesn't mean having the most content or knowing the most stuff. At the end of the day, music is sound. And if you sound good and you adhere to whatever the requirements are of a band or an orchestra, ultimately, all the skills that you're going to learn with music, such as how to play something, where to play something, timing, things like that, all of those skills that one would learn in music need to come out, at that point in a recital or in something like that. It's people, I think, and this goes for every instrument, they end up focusing a little bit too much on chops and the musical content, and then they may not have the best musician's ear. So um, a lot of the greats that I tend to gravitate toward, and this is where musical preference obviously comes in. Everybody has a different perspective. But I noticed, like, if I had to summarize, like, kind of a common denominator with a lot of guys I listened to, they always had a great sense of melody. So I could learn maybe a little bit of a guitar solo, and I'm in the car humming, that solo, where I think a lot of current rock players they're going for so much speed, and there's nothing wrong with playing fast, but you could say more with the right couple notes at the right time, leave some space, and then play fast, and be able to introduce it the right way, and have kind of a breathtaking performance if done correctly. So, it's really that really is what to me differentiates somebody that's just a instrument learner or owns an instrument or plays an instrument compared to what is the musicianship of that person.
That was fascinating, Matt. And just to make sure that I have that, I mean, it was really, really fascinating. Thank you so much for sharing your perspective on that. So, for a musician, basically, it sounds like a musician is somebody who has integrated the sound, and they have
Yeah,
the sound flowing through them. They're able to capture their musical ideas, translate it, but they're also storytellers. They understand when to
yeah,
when to bring in the drama, when to pull back the drama, when to do a slow introduction.
yeah.
Um, they're able to play with others.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, the huge one thing that I would add to that is, being a musician. I mean, if you're going out and doing a solo thing by yourself, that's yeah, you could, that's part of being a musician. But working well, um, being able to tell a story with what you're doing, but also being able to serve the song and knowing your role in the band or in the given project. If your job as a bass player is to play three notes and hold the groove down, and that's it, you got to be disciplined enough to do it. And serving that greater purpose, which is the uniformed effort of everybody coming out as one front. And if somebody is going out, maybe so like somebody said, well, I said, well, who are you playing for the one time? I said, are you playing for yourself or are you playing for the audience? And a lot of times people are going out there and they're trying to show off, which we've all been there. It's like, yeah, look at what I could do. But yet it might not have been the right thing to do at the given time in that story of that song, in that performance. It's almost like if you got in a car accident and I went out and I started shining the bumper on my car. Well, it's the right thing to do, but it's the wrong time to shine the bumper.
I love that metaphor. That was wonderful. Okay, last question, Matt.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was really funny, man. Very clever. Um, are there any questions I didn't ask you that I should have asked you?
Man, I think you really went in depth pretty well with the topic of what music means to people, and I think it needs to be an ongoing discussion. There's no end all. There's only your perspective. I would maybe just suggest that studying the perspective of professional musicians that are in kind of a high regard is the best way to start sifting out common denominators. And that's kind of where I'm voicing an opinion with what I said, but yet I could kind of back my opinion up by things that were told to me, little bits and bobs along the way of knowing when to lay back in the band and how to be the best musician. And being a better musician had almost very little to do with my guitar capabilities and more with my inner sense of melody and how to serve that song, and again removing myself and my own agenda out of it. And even being a band leader, it's interesting that you know uh, knowing what the audience wants to hear with music. What do they expect? So even I noticed as a lead guitar player, I could go out there and play solos, and that's a big part of the gig for me. But I noticed like males in the audience, they want to hear scorching guitar licks. And like females in the audience tend to want to see the band as a unity. They like to see the relationship on stage of the band members and stuff. So if you're going in with a bunch of guys that you don't get along with, that's a big part of the musicianship as well, because there might be an underlining bad vibe going on, and the host sets the party. So if you're playing and there's some tension in the band or something like that, people are going to be PhDs in picking up on that notion.
Matt, where can people go to find out about your work? I think everybody who's watching this should book themselves or their child or someone they know a guitar lesson with you. So, last two questions is Where can people go to discover your music, and where can they go to book a guitar lesson with you?
All right. So right now I am accepting private students through my email. I will send you that email. It's mbennick1980 at gmail.com. So the best way to do that is to get in touch with me directly. You could find footage of me on YouTube. The best way to do that is just to Google my name, Matt Bennick, and there's some live performances that come up. And I do have some videos of just some, that I'm getting into with doing product testing and reviews and stuff like that. So if you were to look at me on Facebook, it's Guitar Time with Matt Bennick. I don't have exactly the link right in front of me, but if you just look up Matt Bennick on Facebook, I do have a guitar lessons page where I describe what it is that I could offer someone. And I would just like quickly to add with, you know, I mentioned before something called the exchange of value. And when, we call ourselves musical educators, and, I know where I fall on the yardstick musically in comparison to others. And there's a couple things with that. You can't compare yourself to others only as a gauge, but you want to be the best you that you could be. You know, you that's really the ultimate goal. We already have Eric Johnson's, and we had Jimi Hendrix, and we have Robin Ford's, so we want to cultivate a Brian Parham. We want to cultivate a Matt Bennick or the next. I like to think of any and every student that walks in or talks to me as there's a potential next whoever their name is. And they might have something totally new to offer the spectrum. But what happens is I tend to notice a lot of teaching tools have gotten better over the years, and I tend to have a lot of luck going right for the goal, and then a lot of other musical things are peripheral. So, yes, you want to sprinkle in reading music, or you want to sprinkle in, you know, um, uh, different scales or whatever. But I noticed that when I say an exchange in value is you don't want to string people along and make it boring or make it seem purposeless for someone to get involved with you. You want to be excited, just as excited, or have contagious excitement for a student signing up with you to get them pumped to see you and to get that guitar in their hands. And maybe it works out, maybe it doesn't, but that you did the best you that you could be as an educator to exchange that value for somebody that, they're giving you money or cash. And hey, maybe it took me, years just to figure out how to change a string properly on my guitar. Well, maybe I just saved you 5 lessons from going to another guy that doesn't know the right way to do that, or whatever. So I try and be as right to the point and not greedy with anything as as possible, and just get right to it, right to the excitement, and make sure that you're getting value musically from. And I think we all should be doing that, and I think a lot of us are doing that. That we make sure that's a valuable experience for everybody involved.
And that goes back to one of those, that's one of the major life lessons that if you can apply to your life in general, that is going to be one of those ingredients to success. So Matt
Yeah,
Bennick, I'm going to ask you to stick around. I just want
sure.
to say thank you so very much. It's been such an honor to have you on the Rock Dojo. Why is music important? Vlog or YouTube channel,
Nice.
and we're going to be doing a blog post. But thank you so much. Just stick around for one
My
second.
pleasure. Thank you so much for